Okay, after some technical difficulties, I think I am live on Facebook and on Zoom recording. Okay, there we go. So this week I wanted to talk about protein. I don't see any questions, which is unusual, but I also noticed that people are not getting alerted that I am even going to be teaching something. So it's Facebook and their whatever they do, right? Who knows what's being seen when and where. So I apologize to the recording. I think I'm going to have some of the back of my camera on there because I can't get it to do right. Anyway, so one of the most common questions I get is, where do you get your protein? It's one of those things that just bang myself in the head. I hear it so many times. Protein is very complicated. So before I begin answering that question, where do you get your protein? So the first thing most people tell me is they eat, meat, right? So think about some of the largest animals in the world. Think about gorillas, elephants, giraffes, cows, buffalo. What are they eating? Whales. What are they eating? None of them are eating meat. So we can get our protein from other sources. It does not have to be meat. And then we get the things like iron, which is something I'm writing about. So I wrote about it in the article Friday. There'll be another article coming out this Friday that will have even more information about iron. But so we do get more iron from like red meats. It's more easily absorbed, but it's not always the healthiest form of iron. And as always, it can be too much of a good thing. It's sometimes we can build up in iron. Our body doesn't have systems in place to eliminate excess iron. And so we want to make sure we don't get too much iron. But when we get in our foods, it's usually safer than using supplements. Please do not supplement with iron. Now, if you have a medical condition where your doctor's telling you to, do not listen to me, listen to your doctor. Medical disclaimer, I am not a doctor, I'm only an educator. So why do we worry about protein? It's something that has just been hyped up and marketed. We have big beef, we have big ag, we have people who promote sugar, we have people who promote eggs, we have the egg board. And so they're always speaking, hey, we need all of this protein. I think that the egg was like the perfect protein or whatever that was when I studied nutrition back in the 90s. And protein is essential. We do have to have protein, but not all sources of protein are created equal, and you don't need as much as you think. It's very uncommon for a healthy adult in the United States to have a protein deficiency. One of the things I learned back in the 90s was certain illnesses that are related to protein deficiencies, and you don't see those here. Now, for someone who is elderly and ill, or a young child that's having trouble feeding, or certain medical conditions, maybe you're going through cancer treatments, something like that, then there may be increased needs for protein, and it may be very difficult for you to get enough protein. So you could be protein deficient in those cases. But generally, most of us get plenty of protein. Most of us are getting too much protein, especially when we're eating animal-based foods. So how you eat your protein and what comes with it makes a huge difference on how your body handles that protein. When we take in protein, that is, we usually don't eat it raw. If we're talking about meat and eggs, even if some people say they get protein from dairy, there's really not a lot. It's more fat than protein in there. And we get protein in our beans. So anything that we eat, we have to break it up into the individual amino acids. Well, meats, we don't eat them raw. Maybe you eat raw tuna in a sushi roll or something like that, but very rarely do we eat any raw meat. So it is cooked. And when we cook foods, the proteins become coagulated. They kind of glue together. So when we eat those cooked foods, our body has to work really hard to break it up to get those amino acids. And as it's working, the harder the body has to work, the more acid we create and the more that we need to neutralize those acids. We need our body to be slightly alkaline. So if we're eating meat, chicken, dairy, because it is processed, it is pasteurized. So anytime you drink milk, unless you're getting it raw from a farm, so people do get raw goat's milk or raw dairy. It is not sold commercially here where we live. It's not legal. You can get it straight from a farmer, but you can't buy it in a grocery store if it's raw. So that's heated to kill any bacteria, which is good. We don't want those pathogens. But once again, those proteins are congealed and our body has to work really hard. And so a lot of times people say, well, I eat dairy to get calcium. Well, unfortunately, it takes more calcium than is in that dairy to neutralize the acids created in breaking down that protein. And so those can be actually harmful for our health. There are other sources we can use to get a healthier protein source. And then there are some that are highly toxic, as in carcinogenic, causing cancer causing. So back in, I can't remember what year it is. I'll have to look it up and post it. But hot dogs and processed red meats, including bacon, were listed as carcinogenic, as in when we're giving our child a hot dog or a sausage or a bologna sandwich, which is what I grew up on, we might as well be giving them cigarettes. Would you give your child a cigarette? No. So don't give your child a hot dog. Don't give them processed red meats. We need to give children, especially children with growing bodies, healthy foods, not foods that are going to create illness and disease. And so those are processed red meats. And so while they can have iron in them, they are way more harmful than beneficial. And protein. So when proteins are cooked, they coagulate, they stick together, and it becomes difficult. So also when we grill or smoke foods, or when we cook them with oil, we're creating even more harmful effects for the foods. And so then it's even harder for us to digest and get any nutrients. So I've lost my connection. I think I'm back live. So eating like fried eggs, that really increases cancer risk and it decreases your ability to absorb those proteins. So most Americans consume 2 times the National Academy of Medicine's recommended daily intake of protein. So the Academy recommends 56 grams for men and 46 grams of protein for women. So that would be the equivalent of 2 eggs and half a cup of nuts and 3 ounces of meat. So although optimal protein intake may vary depending on age and activity level, there are different ways you can search and look and see how much protein you need. It all depends on where you are in your growth stages, what your health is in. If you are recovering from a trauma, you may need a little bit more protein. If you eat like I do, whole food, plant-based, or AKA vegan, then you want to make sure that you are a little bit on the higher side. You are eating more alkalinized types of proteins. And so it's easier on your body. So it's safer for you to eat more proteins. And because meat is more easily absorbed, you need to increase a little bit more if you are eating a quote unquote vegan diet. So when we eat proteins, our body breaks it down into amino acids, and all whole foods contain amino acids. I don't know which camera to look at. So even bananas, broccoli, potatoes, all of those contain amino acids, and not in large amounts. Now, broccoli contains more percentage-wise than the others. But when we eat different plant foods, we eat a large variety of foods, then we're getting all of the different amino acids that we need. So our body reuses amino acids. So it used to be thought that when you needed a complete protein, you had to combine certain foods, that you needed like a bean with a whole grain. So something like it was recommended back in the 90s, like a peanut butter sandwich that had peanuts, a legume, and hopefully whole grain bread for your whole grain, then that gave you your quote unquote complete protein, meaning that it contains all of the essential amino acids, those that you have to get in your foods in your meal. And so it was thought, one person wrote an article saying that you had to combine to get all the protein. It has since been shown that is not true. And a peanut butter sandwich is not the best way to get your protein. So first of all, unless it is a whole grain, completely whole grain with a less inflammatory legume, then that would be a much better option for you. So you don't have to combine your proteins all in one meal. You can get them at different ways, and we recycle them. So you think about it. So if we're eating a high protein meal, let's say we're eating, we'll use Legos. So we have a boat made out of Legos. And so that's what you're eating. You're eating this boat made out of Legos. You know, you have all the red and green and white rectangles and squares, blue, little flat ones, whatever. Those are all the amino acids that made up that boat. So whatever you're eating that's high in protein. So you eat it and you break it up into all those individual pieces. So that's your individual amino acids. That's what your body does. It has to break that into all those little pieces. Then for whatever it needs, if it needs to repair, maybe you're a broken leg, maybe you have an infection, it needs to carry different things around. Whatever you need, it reassembles and recreates whatever is needed to carry nutrients and things like that throughout your body. So it's going to break it apart. So when we eat meat, once again, it's harder to break those Lego pieces apart. They're like almost glued together, which is why we like to eat plant-based proteins. And just like Legos, Legos don't get worn out. I've stepped on a million and they don't get crushed. They're recycled. Now, eventually proteins or amino acids do get worn out. So Legos, I've never seen one actually get crushed, but your proteins do after a while. They do last for a while and they are recycled. So you don't have to worry about getting protein in every meal and all of the different essential amino acids in every meal. Now, there are different times when we do need more protein, and there's different effects that protein can cause in our body. Like when you eat a lot of meat, that can cause a strain on your kidneys. Your kidneys is what regulates your different electrolytes, and to neutralize acids created from high dairy or high fat or inflammatory foods, your kidneys is going to have to start changing the hormones to extract minerals from your bones. And those changes can be harmful for your kidneys and your adrenals. So you want to make sure that you're eating a lot of vitamin C and antioxidant rich foods when you do decide to eat those foods, if you do. So get your protein from plant foods whenever possible. Eating legumes, that's your beans or peas. Green peas are an excellent source of protein. Nuts and seeds, whole grains, make sure they are whole. Rolled oats are not whole oats. Oat groats are. Brown rice is. So it should look like the seed. You should be able to plant it in the ground if it's a whole grain. That's why pasta is not a quote unquote health food, because you can plant pasta and get whatever it is that you are trying to grow. I can't plant a noodle and get something. Well, I can't with a zoodle either. But my example is it's not a grain. We can't call pasta a grain. So other high protein sources, well, I talked about the nuts. Nuts and seeds like cashews, walnuts, chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, sunflower seeds, sesame seeds. All of those are very high in protein and other nutrients. You want to lean more towards the omega-3 rich amino acids. Omega-3 rich fatty acids when you're looking for your protein. Those are the ones that are anti-inflammatory, and we don't get as many of those in the US diet. So if you can aim for hemp seeds, walnuts, chia seeds, flax seeds, those are going to be more anti-inflammatory. So if we can aim for those. Whole grains, like I said, whole oat groats, quinoa, buckwheat groats, even corn. Corn can be inflammatory for some people, but that can be a healthy source of protein as long as it is whole. Your beans like chickpeas, zucchini beans. The zucchini beans are fabulous. They're very high in protein. They're a little bit harder to get. Black beans, very high in protein, pintos, kidney beans, cannellini beans, even edamame, tofu, and tempeh. Now, if you're looking for protein powders, I said that edamame and tofu and tempeh can be a great source of protein. However, when you're looking at a protein powder, make sure it doesn't say soy isolate. That means that different chemicals have been extracted from the soy, and I'd much rather you have a whole protein source. And then your grains. Greens are very, very high in protein. Like I said earlier, broccoli, very high percentage of protein, but you have to eat an awful lot. So a lot of people who eat like me, quote unquote, vegan, whole food, plant-based, they eat greens 3 times a day. Greens in a smoothie, greens in a soup for breakfast. That's what I do. A large salad with lots of greens. And when I say large salad, I mean large salad. When you finish your salad, you should be full and not be hungry again till dinner. If you are hungry before dinner, your salad wasn't big enough. Now, when you see my pictures of my salads, you see I add a lot of different things to my salad. Lots of different vegetables. I have some raw, I have some cooked because I want the enzymes that are in the raw foods. I always have a cruciferous vegetable that could be kale, collards, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, any of those. I always have one of those. And then I have different colors because I want all the different chemicals that come in the different foods. And then I usually have nuts and seeds and then whatever herbs that I sprinkle on top. I always add some seaweed flakes, some dulse powder, something like that for extra omega-3s for anti-inflammatory reasons. So if you are concerned about your protein intake, you can always track it. If you are someone who tends to who's struggled with an eating disorder or something like that, tracking may not be right for you because people can get obsessed with that. If you've gotten away from an eating disorder and then you start tracking, then sometimes it's too hard to not look at calories and start watching calories. For me, I don't care about calories. I care about nutrients. I want to make sure I'm getting all of the vitamins and all the minerals and a good source of omega-3 fatty acids. I always check the omega-3s, the vitamins and the minerals when I do my tracking, but it'll show you protein too and show you if you're missing any. And if you upgrade to a certain level of Cronometer, you can even see what are the best sources for that food. The free one doesn't show you that. It'll show you which amino acids are missing. You could always Google it. That's what I do. Or you can upgrade and click on it. And like if you notice you're not getting vitamin E each day, you can click on vitamin E and it'll tell you good sources for vitamin E. Anyway, I hope this helps you understand a little bit more about protein. Please post questions for next Monday. I love, love, love to hear from you. I love to know that you're watching and that you're getting something from these videos. So please let me know what else you would like to hear and what you learned from today. Have a great week.